Welcome everyone. Today's lecture explores how bilingualism contributes to what's called cognitive reserve. It's a concept tied to how our brains can remain resilient even in the face of aging or disease. We'll unpack how managing two languages affects the brain and what that means for long-term cognitive health. In the bilingual brain, both language representations are constantly activated in the bilingual brain, irrespectively of contextual need or conscious intent. This ongoing activation results in what we might call a mental workout. Every time a bilingual person speaks, listens, or even thinks in one language, the brain is also managing interference from the other. Over a lifetime, this functions like cognitive training. In that respect, we consider bilingualism as a lifelong mental workout for control networks. When managing two languages, even in a so-called monolingual mode, where only one language is being used, a bilingual brain keeps the other language active at a lower level. This constant parallel activation creates ongoing competition between possible words or grammatical forms. Here's a simple illustration. A Korean-English bilingual thinking of an apple will immediately activate the Korean word sagwa and also the English word apple. The brain then must select the correct term, which we call a target term, and suppress the competing one, the non-target term. To successfully juggle their two languages, bilinguals rely on a cognitive ability named language control. The bilingual's control system consists of the mechanisms that allow a speaker to select and produce words in the intended language, while suppressing interference from the non-target language. This cognitive system supports both language selection and inhibition, ensuring fluent communication in the intended language while suppressing the other. The cognitive processes involved in the bilingual language control system are quite complex. It includes deciding which language to use, selecting the correct word, suppressing intrusions from the other language, monitoring for intrusions or mistakes, and switching languages when needed. These language control processes recruit specific brain regions, as shown in this brain diagram. These brain regions work together to form a language control network. The control network allows the bilingual brain to do several things. When bilinguals speak in one language, this network must continuously suppress activation in the other language. When both languages are activated, the control system resolves that competition at multiple levels. According to Abutalebi and Green's adaptive control hypothesis, different interactional contexts impose distinct control demands on bilinguals. Let's talk about three different types of contexts: single language context, dual language context, and dense code switching context. In a single language context, only one language is used in a given environment. Thus, control demands are relatively low as the non-target language is rarely activated. In a dual language context, both languages are used but at separate times or places. For example, if you use Korean at home but English at school, that would be considered a dual language context. In that situation, bilinguals can anticipate which language is required, so control still remains moderate. In a dense code switching context, frequent switching is required within a single conversation. In that case, control demands are highest as bilinguals must constantly monitor, switch, and inhibit at both local and global levels. Let's talk about specific control processes involved in each context. In a single language context, where only one language is used, control demands are relatively low, but goal maintenance and suppression of the non-target language are still needed. Goal maintenance is related to keeping one language schema active at all times, while resisting leakage of the non-target language. Also, it recruits conflict monitoring and inhibition processes. This is necessary as the brain must constantly scan for any hint of L1 or L2 activation, depending on the context, and inhibitory mechanisms must immediately suppress it. In a single language context, however, there is a low switching demand, as there is little to no need for switching languages. Overall, the single language context trains the system toward a highly stable state of suppressing the other language. In a dual language context, where both languages are used but typically in separate settings, heightened goal maintenance and inhibition are required. The brain constantly updates which language is appropriate for the current interlocutor and suppresses the non-target language when conflict arises. Also, there is active salient cue detection, which is related to detecting when to switch to a different language. Upon detecting a cue, the brain selectively inhibits the ongoing language. This engages its schema and engages the other language. In a dual language context, there is low opportunistic planning. Opportunistic planning here means using both languages strategically and fluidly in real time to optimize communication. It's what enables natural blended bilingual code-switching speech without needing to pause or switch explicitly. Since there is little blending of languages in this context, switching is handled as discrete binary transitions, thus resulting in low opportunistic planning. In a dense code-switching environment, where speakers alternate between languages even within a sentence, the brain engages in active opportunistic planning. This means there's less need to suppress one language over the other and more need to coordinate both actively. As a result, there is minimal switch cascade demand, meaning there is no need for discrete stop L1 and start L2 steps. The system co-activates both languages in a fluid manner. As such, different interactional contexts require different cognitive demands. Overall, cognitive mechanisms and neural resources used for language control are thought to overlap, at least partially, with those of domain general executive function. By domain general executive function, we're basically talking about our brain's control center that allows us to stay focused, avoid distractions, switch gears, and remember what we are doing. In that context, bilingualism doesn't just support communication, but it also enhances general executive functions to a certain degree. Over a lifetime of use, as bilinguals juggle between two languages, they develop a form of mental resilience known as cognitive reserve. Cognitive reserve refers to the brain's capacity to tolerate normal aging or disease-related changes without showing declines in thinking or memory. It's often expressed as the gap between brain damage and actual mental performance. In simple terms, it refers to the brain's ability to maintain performance despite damage or aging. It helps explain why some people can have brain changes associated with Alzheimer's disease without showing noticeable symptoms right away. Let me unpack this a little bit more. Here's a visual: patient A and patient B. Let's say both patients have the same level of brain damage, such as Alzheimer's. But patient B has a higher cognitive reserve than patient A. In that case, patient A will show noticeable impairment, whereas patient B will continue performing well on cognitive tests. That's all a result of higher cognitive reserve. Because we currently lack cures for many neurodegenerative diseases, like Alzheimer's, building cognitive reserve to mitigate or delay their onset and reduce their impact on daily functioning is a crucial preventive strategy. What research shows is that there are various lifestyle factors that contribute to cognitive reserve, like higher levels of education, occupational complexity, frequent engagement with leisure activities, physical exercise, healthy diet, and bilingualism. The protective power of bilingualism can be discussed in terms of two lines of research. First, pathological aging research, and second, healthy brain research. According to research related to disease-related decline, compared to monolinguals, bilinguals exhibit a 4 to 5 year delay in Alzheimer's disease symptom onset. This holds even when controlling for education, immigration status, or cultural background. This means that when the influence of these other factors was removed statistically, the remaining difference is more likely attributed to bilingualism itself. Bilingualism also delays the onset of mild cognitive impairment by up to 7.4 years, amnestic MCI, primary progressive aphasia, and even Parkinson's disease. Some brain imaging studies compared bilinguals and monolinguals who had similar levels of Alzheimer's or cognitive impairment. And interestingly, even though both groups had about the same memory or thinking problems, bilinguals often had more visible damage in their brains. What that means is that bilinguals were showing more physical damage in their brains, even though they were behaving just as well as monolinguals. This is strong support for the idea of cognitive reserve, as it shows being bilingual helps the brain build a reserve, so you can cope with more damage before memory or thinking difficulties become obvious. Now let's move on to research related to healthy aging, which is about natural brain decline. Research findings demonstrate that older bilinguals often outperform age-matched monolinguals on a variety of cognitive tests. This includes executive function tests, memory recall, semantic memory, and even general intelligence. This is not too surprising, considering that the bilingual language control system overlaps with domain general executive functions. Therefore, as you use two languages regularly, you are enhancing the capability of executive functions. Research further supports that bilingualism seems to protect the brain from aging by helping it stay thicker, better connected, and more active in important areas. For example, bilinguals keep more gray matter in areas that usually shrink with age, like the front and side parts of the brain. Gray matter refers to the part of the brain that helps with thinking and memory. In addition, they also have stronger white matter connections, the wiring that connects different brain areas, which usually weakens as people get older. Overall, research related to pathological aging and healthy aging seem to suggest that bilingualism is a significant factor that helps us build cognitive reserve. While there are various lifestyle factors, bilingualism is especially valuable for several reasons. First, it's a daily mental workout. Bilinguals use both languages daily, keeping their brain's control systems active all the time. Not just occasionally, like other cognitive reserve activities, such as physical exercise or leisure activities. Second, it is accessible to many people. Over half of the world is bilingual, and it often happens naturally without needing wealth or specific education. In that sense, it is a fair and widely available brain booster. Third, it supports social and cultural engagement too. Speaking two languages helps people socially connected and culturally engaged, which also supports brain health. Finally, unlike other activities, bilingualism has well-studied effects on the brain. There is now strong empirical support that bilingualism reshapes the brain's control networks, making them more efficient and better at handling aging. Overall, brain research suggests that bilingualism plays a unique role in mitigating and delaying both pathological and healthy age-related cognitive decline. In that sense, we should not view bilingualism only as a linguistic ability, but as a lifelong cognitive investment in brain health. This is it for today. Thank you.